All right. You said you were 9 when you started smoking weed.
That was the first time I ever smoked weed. And then I'd say took about 3 weeks for me to start smoking every single day. Found it in elementary school initially, and it was really hard to get a hold of. And then once I got into middle school, it was everywhere. Started smoking weed at 9, and then that led me to anything that I could get my hands on, really. It was kind of crazy because once I found weed and it got me to not feel anything anymore, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to stop feeling everything.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond Risk and Back. I am your host, Aaron Huey. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode. This is Trey's story. I met Trey because he had a family member who was in my treatment program who had a very successful experience. And it was after his family member left that he and I got connected. And I will tell you, and I'm going to let him tell his story, but what I'm going to tell you about Trey is that the first day we talked, this dude did a cannonball off the high dive into the deepest end of the pool. He did not stick his toe in and test the waters. He was like, yeah, can we talk? And I was like, sure. And he's like, brah. And it was full tilt. And from that point, I watched this guy change his mind, change his heart, change his body, change his soul and his financial situation. I watched this guy work so damn hard on his personal life, and his journey from where we started just a few short years ago to where he is now is spectacular and fascinating. So today is Trey's story. And for those of you who are new to Beyond Risk and Back, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I hope you find a lot of support here. And for those of you who have been with me for a while, thank you for coming back. All of you, check the link down below for our Ko-fi link to become a member to get the private training sessions, the Brad private training sessions. Coming up in the middle episode, I will be talking about my new book that's been released, The 4 Prime Archetypes, Why We Do What We Do, available on Amazon. I guess I just talked about my book, but until that moment comes, who I've got on the line right now with us is Trey Ellis. Trey, what up, man?
How's it going?
It's going great. Congratulations. You're getting frickin' married.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's been crazy, but
this is, I mean, when I saw you posted the announcements on Instagram, I was surprised. I was not too surprised because as I was telling people, you and I have worked together for a while. This is something that's been on your vision board, falling in love and marrying this person that you are absolutely head over heels with. So congratulations. I know everybody's really excited. And thank you for coming on the show and talking about the journey from 9 years old until now. You've come a long way, brother.
yeah, thank you. It's definitely been a journey, but I'd say I'm thankful for everything that's happened, I guess, at this point. So it's always good, but yeah.
There is a part where it starts to work and you look back and you're like, I couldn't be here without being there. And that sucks, but it's also kind of bittersweet looking back. When you look back, what are the big things of childhood that stand out that led you to wanting to numb completely out at 9 years old?
My parents got divorced, I believe, when I was 8. Prior to that, I'd say the biggest thing that sticks out is when my dad was in the military. He flew U-2s, and then my mom was a doctor. But before they ended up splitting up, one of the things that sticks out the most, and I'd say kind of starts it all out, is I remember before my dad would go on deployments, he would tell me that I was the man of the house now, and I needed to take care of my mom and my younger sister, Echo. And so for me, looking back on it now, I took that way more seriously than my dad ever meant it. But I think that shaped a lot of it because after they ended up splitting up, in my perception, I was the man of the house now. I had to take care of my younger brother and my mom. And I was a kid, so I couldn't do much. And I feel like that could have contributed a lot to me feeling like I wasn't measuring up because I couldn't protect or provide the way an adult could. I was a kid. But for some reason that stuck in my mind. And I would say that was one of the bigger things that kind of ate at me to want to numb out in a way.
It seems like a father is heading off to serve, that's kind of like a term of endearment, that's kind of some sort of, I'm passing on something, at least symbolically. But you took it really intensely. You took it seriously at 8?
And a portion of it was just kind of how the family dynamic was, I guess. Like both my parents worked a lot. So when it was just me and my younger brother and the nanny, I was kind of acting in that fatherly role towards my younger brother, if that makes sense. And so I think that played a portion into it as well. And then the other thing is I'm big on words with people. When people tell me stuff, I just take it at face value or I read way further into it and go off that deep end. Yeah, so that was definitely a part of it. But yeah, I took it super seriously. So those feelings along with a couple of other things that happened after they ended up divorcing. My dad started dating someone and there was stuff going on with his or her younger sons. And so I ended up dealing with the word I use for it now, I guess, is I was molested. And that ate away at me. That's what really flipped the switch to where I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to be around anyone. It seemed like the people around me, those interpersonal skills of just communicating and making friends and all that, I couldn't do that the way normal people did. But when I got high, I wasn't thinking. So then I could go and make friends and hang out and be crazy and get people to like me.
You said to me a while back that part of being the man of the house was that you had to deal with the molesting so that your brother didn't get hurt. That's how far you took the man of the house concept. Like you allowed and didn't put those, and we're children. Boundaries is a concept that we're just learning, but you didn't see an option.
No, my family never found out what was happening with me. They found out what was happening with my younger brother. And it just so happened that for those 3 years, the same thing was happening to me, although it was a different one of her sons. So in my head, when my family came together to get Echo the help he needed, I didn't want to do anything to come in the way of Echo getting the help he needed. And that was one of the ways that I thought I was acting in that fatherly role and playing the provider or whatever.
This is a weird question, but when you look back on that, is there a sense of pride or a sense of pain? Some strange mix of both?
I would say both. And naivety, I would say. I was naive. A portion of it was definitely that I thought if I came out and said that one, I'd be looked at as weak. And then the other was just from watching all of the therapeutic stuff with my younger brother was I would be labeled as a victim. And part of me, I didn't want to feel weak or lesser than, I guess. And so for those parts, I feel naive because I know now I told you the first time I told anyone was you and I was 21. So after that, I know now that no, it doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me a victim unless I choose to view myself that way. I'm just the same guy and things happened in my life that ended up happening. As far as the pain aspect goes, now looking back, I'm not proud of it, but I'm thankful that I took the time myself to reflect on it. And in a way, it shaped a lot of who I am and how I view the world. And so for that portion of it, I'm thankful.
Let's jump forward a little bit because I'm curious. At 9 years old, who on earth offers weed to a 9-year-old? How did the whole first time even happen?
First time was kind of funny. It was me and a couple of friends I had made at school. We were walking home and we were kind of the way it goes is there was a CVS here and there's a school over here and we're walking behind the CVS to get home. And it just so happened that while we're walking there, there's two guys on a motorcycle, and he gets out and he hands this guy a bag full of green stuff. And we'd all heard about what weed was. There was kids at the school already smoking and everything like that. And so I'm like, okay, that's probably weed. So I walked up to the guy on the motorcycle. I'm like, hey, are you selling weed? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, can I buy some? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, how much? He's like, $30. And I'm like, okay. And I gave him the money and he gave me the bag of weed and I walked home. So that was the first time. But yeah, then we walked home and went out and smoked it. And then after that, I was like, oh my God, I think this is the meaning of life. That was my first thought. And
People talk about that first high, that first experience of being like that awe-inspiring, awakening, soothing, comforting, whatever. But do you believe that you spent the rest of your drug addict days searching for that first high? Is that a real concept?
no, I mean, for me, no. It might be for some other people, but I don't think I realized it at the time. I think I realized it about a year in because once you get a tolerance to it all, the only thing it really did for me was make me not feel. It made me not replay all the stuff that happened to me or whatever anyone said or any of that. It just got me to breathe, is how it felt. And there was a portion of time where I loved it at the same time hating it because I knew I was so dependent on it, you know? So for me, no, I think really I was so depressed and I wasn't telling anyone anything. And so to be able to hold up the happy facade around the people around me, it helped. And that was the thing I used to do it.
I mean, you talked about you kept this a secret. Should your parents have seen it? Should they have known?
I don't think that they can really be, they knew, I mean, they didn't know about the drug use until right when I got sent out to treatment, but I think that there's no way for them to have known about what happened to me as a kid because they asked explicitly and I told them no. And so I don't blame them or think in any way that they could have known anything that was going on. But at the same time now, do I wish I would have told them? Yeah. And it's all confusing because I'm still thankful for the fact that I figured it out. I'm still thankful for I tell my fiance this all the time. I would never change anything that happened to me in my life because I'm so grateful for the perspectives I have now. But do I think that was the right move for someone? I don't know.
Hey, folks, I want to share with you a product I've been trying out lately. It's called Magic Mind. It's a natural nootropic drink that helps with focus. I've been trying it alongside my morning coffee. It has cut down on my caffeine consumption, and I really do stay more focused and get a lot more done during the day. So if you're looking for a new drink to try out, I would recommend it. It's extremely healthy. It's filled with all the kinds of stuff you want, you and your kids. It's also available at Sprouts. Check it out. Get it on Amazon. It's an amazing product. And big thanks to Magic Mind for being our first sponsor. Let's jump forward to the beginning of treatment. We're just jumping all over the place. Let's jump forward to the beginning of treatment because going from pot to treatment, and of course you said, you tried anything you got your hands on. How bad did it get? How bad was it when they discovered, understood, and sent you to
It
treatment?
was pretty bad. The whole thing that led me to going to treatment, my parents had been split up. I was in sophomore year of high school. So I hadn't talked to my dad in a couple of years. And then my mom was in Hawaii. I decided with a friend that it would be a great idea to go and try to rob someone we knew for an ounce of wax. And so we get in the car and we're driving and we realize we forgot masks. So we pulled over to a Sportsman's Warehouse and we shoplifted these masks and we got caught. And so I got arrested, got taken back into the little back room of the, can't remember the name of it. It's like merchandise enforcement or something, but they took me back there and they kind of laid it out for me. They're like, hey, you can go to juvie right now, or you can call your mom and have her pick you up. I'm like, okay, what happens then? He's like, well, probation, blah, blah, blah. We don't know. And so I'm like, I got to call my mom. Call my mom. She's in Hawaii. She can't come get me. So she sends a family friend. He comes down, picks me up. And I ended up being able to do a bunch of community service and a probational job fair. And it was kind of a deal they worked out that as long as I didn't get in trouble again, it would be sealed on my record and I wouldn't be charged with it. And so that's what I did. And that's when everything came clean. Because up until that point, my parents didn't really know that I was smoking weed. They didn't really know that I was doing all the other stuff that I was doing. Because at that point, I was really heavily hooked on Adderall And then I was also, I mean, like I said, it was anything I could get my hands on. The worst of it, I would say, was just kind of psychedelics and all of that. Yeah, so they picked me up. My mom comes home early from her trip. I tell her basically everything she told my dad. And my mom ended up sitting me down with my younger brother. And she said essentially that they were both worried about me and that I know my brother looks up to me. So how could I lead that example for him? And once it became about protecting my brother, and the other portion was my brother would have had to go back and live with my dad, and I didn't want to be split up. And so that thought immediately flipped a switch in my brain. And I'm like, okay, I have to change something. So I'm going to treatment.
Would you suggest that as a tactic? Because it's good that it worked, and parents who are doing interventions like that, like, do whatever's going to work. Get the kid into treatment if they're at that point. Now that you're starting to support other people in their recovery, now that you're starting to support families and parents of kids who are in recovery and starting to work at a recovery facility, would you suggest using the tactic of, make this about the younger brother?
I don't know if that would necessarily be the thing I would recommend. I think if you go so far to say your younger brother looks up to you and this is hurting him as well, I think that's okay. But as far as saying, if you don't do this, your younger brother has to go live away from you or you can't see him or whatever, I don't think that would be right. Because where I stand on it, for me, the thing that was the catalyst to get me in there was to do it for my younger brother. But once I was in treatment, I realized so quickly that if I didn't do it for a portion of me and a portion for him, that nothing was going to change. And I think that's the hardest part, is getting the person who is the addict going to treatment to realize that there's more than just trying to get away from whatever pain you're feeling. Because a lot of what I was running from was I was looking around at the world around me and I didn't know if I could make it to be anyone one day. And that scared the crap out of me. And so I think if there's a way that we could show younger people or people in addiction that you're not just the dope fiend, but if you got yourself together, if you followed a routine, if you played the game, that you could eventually get to a point where you're proud to say your life is your life. I think that would give them a lot of hope.
How old were you at this point?
I went into treatment when I was 15.
And how long of a treatment program did you do?
I was in for 90 days.
Did it stick?
It did. I don't know if you'd call it a slip or what. The only thing that I ended up coming back afterwards, I started vaping again immediately. Because that's the other thing I think was huge for me. Once I got out of treatment, the first thing I did was I called up every single one of the people I used to hang out with, and I told them, hey, I love you, but I can't hang out with you anymore. And now, where I'm sitting today, looking back, that was the smartest thing I ever did. Because I don't think there's any way I could have stayed clean or gotten clean if I was still hanging out with those people.
A lot of people do that in treatment, and in a lot of adult programs, that is literally one of the components of treatment. Is you sit down with the person in their phone and clean the Rolodex. Yeah, and then, do you want to delete this person? And you see the fear suddenly show up on the face, and you're like, is this person one of your dealers? And yeah, back in my day, we called that the strawberry patch. We find out you're allergic to strawberries, you cannot play in the strawberry patch. It took me 7 years to get rid of one of my friends. It was a miserable 7 years. Were you able, I listen, Trey, so many parents look to their kids' friend groups and say either it's the problem or it's a major part of the problem. Do you agree?
I do. I do think for parents, though, it's hard the thing I could see from it would be for parents looking at the friend group, maybe minimizing what their kid did. Because at the end of the day, in my situation, my parents thought my friends were the issue. But the reality was I was the one who walked up to that guy with the motorcycle and bought us weed for the first time. So that's one thing that I think could play a factor into it. But 100%, you're the sum of the closest 5 people you hang out with. I think there's a saying, something like that.
You, after treatment, I remember a pretty desperate call. My wife and I were traveling, and I got a call from you. One of your, I don't want to just cast them off, one of your friends who you had used drugs with was killed. Like that was an intense situation. Is that something you're willing to talk about?
That was 2021, I believe. And to kind of give a backdrop to everything that happened, my grandfather had died. 2 weeks later, my cousin died of a fentanyl overdose. And 2 weeks after that, my best friend growing up had died of a fentanyl overdose as well. And so I got the call at work because even though I told all those friends I can't hang out with them, I can't talk to you, they would still text me when they were having hard times, and they knew I was clean. And I actually helped a couple of them get clean. So I got a text from one of the guys, or a call, I'm sorry. He called me crying saying that our buddy had died and that the funeral was going to be in 2 weeks. And at that point, I was still mourning my grandpa and my cousin. So it all hit me like crazy. And I remember calling you up I think I was crying at the time. And so I ended up kind of just going to work, waiting till this funeral. And one of the things I learned from you, and I heard it said on YouTube, but there's a guy on YouTube and he said, be the person who people can rely on at your mother's funeral. And once I heard that, I was like, okay, that's what I have to do. So I ended up going down there and I spoke at his funeral, hugged his family and everything like that. And it was a beautiful ceremony and everyone was there, and all the people that had ended up getting clean that were in that original friend group. It was good to see them and everything. And then I ended up coming home from Sacramento. And when I got home, I found out that the girl I was with for 5 years had been cheating on me.
Yeah.
And
that was one hell of a month, bro.
yeah,
Like that was a game changer month.
yeah. But now looking back on it, that's another one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I remember I talked to you and you said something I'll never forget. I tell people the same thing all the time, but yeah, you got me in the gym. I started waking up at 4 a.m. every day, going to the gym. I started working like crazy, and yeah, that brought me out to Utah and everything.
Did that month look? I mean, your grandpa, your cousin, your best friend, a girlfriend of 5 years. Like, how close did you get to relapsing?
Honestly, it wasn't close. Because
that's what I was going to say. Like, did that strengthen you or did it weaken you? That's the question I was looking for.
I mean, I was broken up about it, but as far as ever going back to using again, just because I think for all addicts, once you get clean, it's at the forefront of your mind. And not only just like not wanting to use, but the perception from other people if you were to relapse played a big part for me. So when all that happened, I had no thought of going and finding a dealer and getting high. All I could think at that time was, there's another saying I see all the time, but it's the F you, watch this. That's what I felt. It turned me on and woke me up. That's how I would describe it. Even though I was crying a lot, but yeah.
You had, come to one of the coaching trainings that I've run. You're going to start working in the industry itself. How do you know you're ready for this 12th step, for this, taking the gift of hope to those who still suffer? Like, how do you know you're ready to help other people heal?
I think there's two answers to that. The parts that I would say make me want to is because that's one way I can make sure what happened to Cade, I can play my part to try and keep it from happening to someone else. The second part of that is I don't know if I'm ready. And I think because of that, I can keep myself humble and take the critiques of my mentors or the experts and use those. But as far as the drive that would make me want to do it, a portion of it comes from wanting to write the act of me going up and talking to the guy on the motorcycle and getting everyone weed. And the other part is to make sure that I can help the kids that are like Cade. A lot of what I'm seeing with other family members struggling with addiction is, as far as parenting goes, or not even just parenting, but we live in kind of a society nowadays where everything that we could ever want is at our fingertips. And I think a huge portion of what teens who are addicted struggle with is that everything on their phone tells them they can have whatever they want right now, but they can't necessarily go out and do those things that get them the things they want right now because they're kids. And I think a portion of just that angst and wanting for the random stuff that they see on there can play a part in why they might use or how easily it is for them to get into trouble. Because I know as a kid, I didn't have any of the perspective I have today. And a lot of the time, I thought I knew better than everyone else. But I think that if there's a way we could figure out how to get them to realize that doing the hard things in life will get you what you want, rather than taking the instant gratification of whatever's offered today, could change some stuff pretty significantly.
You've had a lot of extended family members also struggle. Like this struggle has not been isolated on you, like your whole family, cousins, on and on. What's your input for people who are a component of a big family struggle? Rather than talking to the parents, I want you to talk to the young man, your perfect client, who's got a cousin who uses, who's got friends who use, who has a younger sibling or an older sibling who's struggling, who maybe their parents are also struggling. What do you say to them about the family struggle? What can you say to them about the family struggle and their own experience with addiction?
You taught me this, but if you can learn the pattern of addiction in your family and you can form it into words and keep yourself out of that little limbic system brain, sometimes all it takes is for you to be the one to break the cycle. If you can get yourself fixed, if you can help yourself out of it, sometimes just people seeing that will give them the hope to do the same thing. And I don't know, as far as my perfect client, if it's a kid and his parents are struggling, I don't know if it's his place to go out and try to change his parents, but he can be damn sure that he fixes himself. That's one thing that I learned from you the most, is that up until we met, I didn't really grasp that I could change my own life. And I think if people understood that they are capable of much more than they think they are, as long as they're willing to put in the effort and put down the hours, your life can be so much different than what it is today. That would be the main thing. Just take control of your life and try to do what's best for you. That would be what I'd say.
What's your website URL?
ConqueringRecovery.com.
ConqueringRecovery.com. What blows me away about Trey and his story is that at the beginning, he's in harm's way, trying to be the man of the family. And on this side of his work, he's in healing's way, being the man of the family. The man of the family component never died in Trey. And he's now getting ready to start his own family that he's going to be the man of. Except rather than trying to save others through putting himself in a dangerous situation, this guy takes himself to the gym. This guy works his butt off. He does the things that, without this becoming an alpha male podcast, that I learned that this is what men were supposed to do. You take care of yourself, you heal yourself, you get your butt to the gym, you work hard so that you can take care of your family. Versus sacrifice yourself, throw yourself in front of the bus so you get run over first, hoping that it'll stop the bus on your heart. And it doesn't. It runs over the rest of your family too. And I will tell you, what Trey has in this industry is the cool factor. Dude's built like a tank. He's still young. But you heard him, parents. He's got this. He's got the understanding. So head to conqueringrecovery.com to connect with him, to connect your young, either teen or, 18 and up young men to Trey's work. Because he coaches, he guides, he mentors, and he demonstrates, he models recovery. Conqueringrecovery.com is where you got to go to find Trey. For your reading pleasure, go to Amazon and pick up The 4 Prime Archetypes, Why We Do What We Do. It is a book that took me 25 years to write. And with the help of Martina Kudron out of Slovenia, she, like a cleric, helped get this book finally across the finish line. I am desperately proud of it. It's 250 pages with color pictures and charts and quizzes and anecdotes and stories, and it's about you. It's about you figuring out who you truly are and who your spouse is, who your friends are, who your employees or your employers are, and how to navigate the world of relationships by understanding whether or not you're a warrior, a wizard, a jester, or a bard. Go check it out. I think you'll really love the book. As always, if you're interested in more content and more conversation, check out the Brad private sessions on our Ko-fi channel. Links are down below as always. I am putting the tools, tricks, tactics, and techniques over there that I have used in 20 years of working with parents, teens, children, and young adults who struggle. And parents, remember, take care of yourselves first, your adult relationships second, and your children third. This is how we do our best work with our children. And I will see you next week on Beyond Risk and Back.